What y'all doing? Well, got the first tournament going. Didn't really find them in practice. I don't know really where they're at, but we're gonna go flip a jig around, see if we can get a jig bite. See how it goes.
Dad caught one. Okay. Can we get the waiter, Dad? Here.
Okay, hold up. Small one.
Hey. That's my toy.
All right, so here's the fishing story. So Friday we start practicing for the tournament that's gonna happen on Saturday. About a week, maybe 2 weeks ago, I was doing really good right here in Grape Creek. You know, there was still some largemouth that were pretty close to where they were spawning. All this shallow area here was a really good spot for them to spawn, so that's why that was pretty productive, you know, 2 weeks ago. They had this deep water here, you know, they could come up, do their thing, get back out into the creek. So Friday, we get going, we start practicing, and absolutely nothing. So I'm kind of scratching my head, you know, starting to worry a little bit. My buddy's doing good in practice, you know, he's finding them, he's doing real good. So I'm starting to panic a little, so I go up another creek, a little bit further down, kind of more closer to the river. Of course, I went up its river quite a bit as well. Here, still nothing productive. The water's pretty muddy down here. So I fished all the way out until I got to this middle section of this arm. And of course, you can see this point I have here. So this whole bank here, I actually caught two that were under 12 inches, and during the tournament, you know, they had to be over 14 to even weigh them in. So two of them there under 12 inches, you know, but it was a small clue. So anyways, Saturday comes around, we blast off. Of course, I come to where I think, you know, I'm having the most luck here. And of course, it's Grape Creek. Sit there for about 2 hours, nothing, not even a nibble. And my buddy is right here, kind of in the mouth, and he's just smashing them. He's got a bag within, I don't know, you know, first hour, and he's a killer. So he got him pretty quick. So, you know, that's always in the back of your mind, like, damn, you know, he's already got his little bag going. And he ended up getting, you know, coaling up, so he actually ended up with a good bag. But so my second thought was, hey, let's go to the dam. Let's see if we can catch any of them roaming around. And that's where my second spot was. I stayed there for about maybe an hour, you know, no movement. So in my head, I'm thinking, man, what am I gonna do? So obviously I wanted to get the jig bite, so I run all the way back up this river here. And I'm talking, I get, you know, just muddy chocolate milk water, just trying to catch, you know, a largemouth, because this lake, Allen Henry, it's known for spotted bass. Like, there's some trophy spotted bass here, especially in Texas. But to win this tournament and the hammers that were in this tournament, you know, I know you're gonna have to get a largemouth bite, or you're gonna have to catch some of them really nice spots. So, you know, basically my whole thing is I want to fish for what no one else is fishing for, and I'm gonna go largemouth fishing, you know, at this lake, because typically every time you catch one, I mean, you know, you're gonna catch a good one. So I get up in this kind of arm here, nothing. I seen them blowing up everywhere. Everything I was throwing, they didn't like it. So then I come back off into the main creek arm, same thing. Get up real shallow as much as I can. I'm talking chocolate milk. You know, same same answer. You know, nothing. I can see them, just, you know, they're not having it. So then finally, I'm like, all right, you know, there's only 2 points basically where I caught them during practice. So let's go back over there. So I'm on this bank here, and right when I get onto this point, it's a big point, but right here there's a lot of rocks and there's some bushes sticking out. And you'll see on the video from practice, but there's a bush here that was like, you know, halfway in the water. You can only see pretty much the top of it, a little bit more. And sure enough, I pitch in there, and there she was. I mean, I'm talking a post spawn, you know, mama just trying to load back up for all the stuff that she got rid of, you know, when she was spawning. They're trying to recover. So right in the middle of the creek, right where they're supposed to be, you know, deeper water. Of course, she was on the edge here, you know, shallow, but you can see where she was probably somewhere in some of these flats somewhere, and she was moving back out to deep water. And then on the way, she stopped at this secondary point, you know, to load back up. This is, you know, a really good creek as well. A lot of people really kind of sleep on this creek, but as we can see, it has the big ones in it as well. And I think that's for this lake overall. Like, everybody thinks it's a you know, spotted bass haven, in which it is, but if you fish for the largemouth, then, you know, you're gonna get some bites. Most of the day I was flipping a jig, football head. I also had a swim bait on, and so my strategy was, you know, let's get a jig bite, because of course a jig bite's always good. You know, you're gonna catch quality, and let's see if we can get a good largemouth. So I committed to doing what I had to do, and I really only put 4 rods on the boat, and I'll show you them here. So I had this little swim bait, just kind of cut it down. You know, they were really following everything, but wouldn't commit them much. And then of course I had the minnow for the forward facing sonar bite if we had to get onto that. You know, so sometimes that's really good there. The spotted bass will really give you a good bite there, but you know, that's kind of like my last resort. I didn't really want to do that because I knew a lot of people were going to be doing that, and that was probably going to be most of what everybody weighed in. And of course, forward-facing sonar compared to traditional fishing, I mean, some people like it, some people don't, but I guess that's for another video. So I had another swim bait on, kind of swim bait jig as well. Wasn't working, so I kind of got desperate, and I was like, hey, you know, let's throw a topwater on. So I put this plopper on there. But this is what did it right here. And a lot of you know, you've seen some of my other videos, I really like, you know, a wacky jig, which is like a Cinco like this, but it's wackied out on the end to where, of course, it's like a wacky jig. But they weren't really biting on it, so I figured, you know what, I gotta change my bait up, especially in that creek arm. So this is what I was originally throwing. Old Faithful here. This is the Texas crawl color, and then I had that with this. Get it open here. This worm. That's what I was throwing all day, right? So I'm not doing too good. Finally, I'm like, let's switch it up. So I get the green and brown jig out, and then I had these little Cincos, you know, red. Just old bag, didn't ever think of them. Kept them on the boat because I don't know why, you know, sometimes you just keep stuff. When you see the bag, you're like, hey, you know, I got to keep that. So this is one of those ones. I was like, hey, I got to keep that. So I'll get this out of the bag. And like I said, the wacky presentation wasn't doing too good. So then I straight tailed it. And this one's messed up because it got bit, of course, but that was it. That's what she wanted. You know, it wasn't the black colors or darker colors. It was actually something more natural. This red in the springtime is dynamite, but you know, we're kind of more post spawn, and she does look, you know, post spawn. So, you know, that's what she wanted. Maybe it was just more subtle, or it didn't wiggle as much as the 5-inch, but for whatever reason, that got her to go. So like I said, that bush was barely sticking out of the water, and I just pitched in there. And it's actually funny, my friend, he was in the tournament too, and he was like, you know, we were talking about everything, and he's like, hey man, I think you're fixing to catch one. And sure enough, when I set the hook, I mean, it felt like just a wet rag, you know, on the other end of the hook. And I set the hook, you know, not very hard, didn't even, you know, set the hook like some of these people do, where, you know, they're coming off their feet. I just a normal old hook set. And as soon as I felt her on the other end, I was like, oh my gosh, like this is a giant. And you know, fodder, and of course the GoPro dies, right? So I missed having her on video by like maybe 20 minutes, because when I was upriver in the chocolate milk, I mean, the GoPro was on. But anyways, so get her in the boat, and I'm freaking out, right? And we get her weighed, and sure enough, you know, she's over 8 pounds, and new PB for me. And to top it all off, I mean, this is my first tournament, right? And you know, it just adds to the mystique of jig fishing. Like, if you haven't tried it, you know, lock it in your hand. And that's funny, because last year I made it a point, like, I'm gonna, you know, get good at jig fishing. And last year, that's all I did, literally. Of course, I'd throw the minnow, you know, everybody's throwing the minnow, but I was like, you know what? There's nothing more traditional. There's nothing that gets more quality bites than a jig. So, you know, last year I just locked a jig in my hand, and it's definitely produced. And it, you know, if there's a group of fish, and even if they're all 2-pounders and maybe there's 1 3-pounder in there, when you throw a jig in there, I mean, you can pretty much expect that 3-pounder, you know, to go and grab it. Whatever quality fish is in that little school or around, you can pretty much expect that it's going to hit that jig. So we get to weigh-ins, everybody is weighing in, and typically, you know, it's just what's here, Allen Henry. So everybody's got some pretty big spots, and it turns out that everybody just caught spots, and this one fish that I set the hook on was 8 pounds, and it won the tournament. And that was it. I only had one fish, and that's what I weighed in, and that was the winner. So just goes to show, like, even if you're on a lake that doesn't have big ones, you don't think they have big ones, or, you know, just like the one here where everybody thinks it's just for spotted bass, like, don't be afraid to stick to your guns and go for, you know, go for broke. Especially with the jig bite. Like, if you're gonna go for a jig bite, it's pretty obvious that, you know, you're gonna fish all day for maybe 4 or 5 bites, but, you know, those 4 or 5 bites are gonna be, you know, pretty good fish. So definitely one for the books. My first ever tournament, I won with 1 fish.